Today, I'm going to show you 2 easy steps that you can take to help blend in your vocals with a 2-track instrumental. So what is a 2-track instrumental? Well, anytime that you buy or lease a beat that has already been mixed and mastered, chances are you're going to be dealing with what's called a 2-track. This means that you don't have access to the individual tracks that make up the beat, such as the hi-hats, the snare, the kick drum, the bass, the melodies. Instead, you probably have a single audio file that's likely a WAV or an MP3. This can be a challenge when trying to create space for your vocals when you can't manipulate the different elements of the beat. So the first thing that I recommend doing, and you can do this in any DAW, is to simply turn down the instrumental. Most 2-track beats are going to be sent to you already limited and pushed to the ceiling of 0 decibels. Let's go ahead and listen to this 2-track instrumental that I have loaded here in FL Studio, and I want y'all to pay special attention to this meter over here on the left side of the mixer. Okay, so as you saw right there, it was already peaking at 0 decibels, which leaves you no headroom to add vocals. If you left the beat right here where it's at volume-wise and then tried to add vocals, it's gonna cause the entire track to go above 0 decibels because the vocals are adding their own energy and voltage into the frequency spectrum. So by turning down the instrumental, you're gonna give yourself more headroom and you're gonna prevent yourself from having to record your vocals at such a high level. Now, in theory, you could just use the volume fader right here on the mixer channel that the beat is loaded to, but I actually like to use a plugin for all of my volume adjustments so I can leave the volume fader right where it's at. And that's just a personal preference for me, but you'll see here that I have the SSL GChannel plugin loaded on the instrumental, and all I'm gonna do is use the output gain fader right here to turn down the beat by about 9 decibels. Turning the instrumental down by 6 to 12 decibels is going to give yourself enough headroom to add vocals. I'm not touching anything else on this plugin as far as EQ or compression goes. All I'm doing is simply turning the beat down, and you can use any plugin that you'd like to do this. So now when I play the beat, it's only going to be peaking at -9. You can bring the overall level of everything back up to that 0 decibel ceiling once you are finished adding the vocals. The next tip that I have for y'all once you've recorded your vocals is to create space for the vocal within the frequency spectrum. Now, a basic way to do this would be to use an EQ plugin like I have loaded right here on the instrumental to carve out some room right here in the 2000 to 4000 hertz range. Using a wide curve to scoop out about 2 to 3 decibels is probably the most you'd want to do since you're dealing with a 2-track instrumental. Just trust your ears and realize when you've pulled back too much on the instrumental, because a lot of instruments are going to be living here in the upper mid-range. You're going to have the top end of your snare, the hi-hats, the melodies, and if you take out too much, it's going to make everything sound weak, and that's not what you want. Less is going to be more when it comes to creating space for your vocal, but just dipping a little bit right here is going to allow the vocal to cut through the mix. Now, something that you could do to make this process a little bit more efficient is to use an EQ plugin that has dynamic EQ capabilities. And what this is going to allow you to do is to only pull back on these frequencies whenever the vocal is playing. There's no need to kind of dip away these frequencies whenever the vocal goes silent. There's going to be certain parts in the song where it's only the instrumental playing, and so there's no use to dip these frequencies whenever the vocal doesn't need to cut through. Now, in order to set this whole process up, you have to sidechain your vocal to the instrumental. And this process is going to be different depending on which DAW you're in, but I'm in FL Studio, so you'll see here in the mixer that my main vocal is sidechained to the mixer track of my instrumental. So if we go over here to the plugin right here that's loaded on my instrumental, in order to activate that sidechain from the vocal, you need to come up here to the top left and press Settings, go to the Processing tab right here, and then under Stereo Aux In, you want to right click and select Main Vocals and then activate that. So now my vocal is feeding this EQ plugin and telling it when to activate. Next, we're gonna go ahead and use EQ point number 5 right here and set it up in a way so that it's acting as a dynamic EQ band. In other words, this EQ plugin is only gonna dip these frequencies whenever the vocal activates its sidechain signal. So whenever the vocal is playing, it's gonna send a sidechain signal to this EQ plugin and tell it to engage. So let's go ahead and set the frequency that we want to dip in order to create space for the vocal. I'm gonna set it at about 2000 Hertz. And I like to set the Q value to a very wide curve so that way it's not very noticeable that we're dipping right there at 2000 Hertz, right? It's a very gentle slope. So I'm gonna set the Q value to about 0.5. And remember, you can always come back and make adjustments if necessary because every vocal is gonna be different and it's gonna call for different EQ moves on the instrumental. I'm gonna leave this gain knob alone because if you use it, it's gonna turn this EQ band into a normal EQ cut where it's always taking out this frequency. And we actually want this EQ band to act dynamically. So I'm gonna go ahead and reset this gain to 0. Now the range knob right here is the maximum amount that you want to remove from this frequency. So I'm gonna go ahead and set that at about -3 decibels because remember, less is more. If you start to pull out too much, it's gonna be very noticeable that you're pulling back at this frequency range. And again, you can experiment with how much you want to take away. Set the attack setting to a very fast setting because you want the beat to duck as quickly as possible whenever the vocal cuts through. And you also want to have a pretty quick release time so that way the instrumental is ducking in time and in sync with the vocal. This dynamic EQ is going to be acting like a compressor, but only for this particular frequency. Okay, so now all we have to do is press play, and as we lower this threshold knob right here, we're going to start to see this EQ band dip more and more because the frequency is surpassing that threshold limit that we have set. But remember, regardless of how low we go with this threshold knob, the range right here of -3 is going to prevent the instrumental from dipping right there at 2000 Hertz more than 3 decibels.
Time is something that I can't get back. I've been counting up my problems and I think I lost track. Can you wake me up when this is done?
And you don't necessarily have to pull back right there at 2000 Hertz every time. For me and my vocal personally, I find that it cuts through the mix better when I pull back on the instrumental right there, but definitely experiment with your own vocal and the instrumental that you're using. Now, if you wanted to take this even a step further and be more precise, I really like using this plugin right here called Trackspacer by Waves Factory. This is a very useful plugin, and the way that it works is it analyzes the sidechain signal, which in our case is going to be the vocal, and it's going to duck those exact frequencies of the vocal on whatever audio you have this plugin loaded on. And really all you have to do is use this amount knob right here in the middle of the plugin to control how much ducking of the instrumental you want. If you click on this blue circle right here, it opens up another panel where you can control the attack and release settings. So again, we want a fast attack and a fast release. All right, so let's go ahead and press play, and we're gonna adjust the amount knob to control how much ducking we want.
Time is something that I can't get back. I've been counting up my problems and I think I lost track. Can you wake me up when this is done? If it's safe out, can you wake me up now? It's hard to hold the
Okay, so as you saw, anytime the vocal was playing, it was ducking the instrumental wherever the vocal was trying to cut through at. So it analyzes the entire frequency spectrum. The vocal was the blue line up top, and then the instrumental that was being pulled down and ducking was in white right here. And you can see visually how much you're pulling down by. Now, it was ducking across the entire frequency range, but you could use this low cut and high cut knob right here to dial in the exact frequency range that you want to pull down by. For instance, if you didn't want the kick or the 808 to be pulled down at all, you would just use this low cut knob right here to kind of filter out and leave the 808 and the kick untouched. You're basically using the low cut and the high cut knob to kind of tell the plugin that you don't want to touch those frequencies. Let's go ahead and press play again and kind of dial all of these settings in.
told I have no place to run. You see, time is something that I can't get back. I've been counting up my problems and I think I lost track. Can you wake me up when this is done? If it's safe out, can you wake me up now?
All right, so that's sounding pretty good right there. And typically I would like to hone in on the mid range whenever I'm pulling back on the instrumental for the vocal. So I did go a little lower right here with the low cut than usual, but I just wanted to demonstrate how the plugin works. All right, so that's it for today. I hope you all enjoyed the content. Please consider subscribing to the YouTube channel if you haven't done so already. Leave me a comment, let me know what you think, and I'll see you in the next video.